Hi, Ben here and welcome back to another Work in Progress Wednesday, and today we're talking about axes. So we mentioned before about the carving axes from Gransfors and the grinds that are available from them, but this has come about because somebody actually contacted us and they're looking for something very particular that isn't actually available anymore. So what I've done, for those that you have homeschooling, you're probably used to having a whiteboard now. I've done a little bit of drawing, so don't judge me on the drawing. But I've tried to do some sketches of the particular grinds just so that it's a little bit easier to see, because obviously seeing the actual cutting edge via a camera is not that easy. So the three grinds that are available from Gransfors are the symmetrical grind, which is actually this particular axe, and what we're going to do, if I can hold both together, we're going to be looking at the axes from this direction. So my little drawing, this is the eye of the axe that you can see where the handle comes through, and this is the grind. So the symmetrical grind is exactly as it says. It's got an equal grind on both sides. Both sides have an equal size convex grind, so it allows you to use it right or left-handed. For my personal preference, I like it because it allows you to work with the grain of the wood. It's not handed, so it allows you to sort of carve spoons and things like that. The other grind that is available are the handed grinds. Now this was a slight adaptation that Gransfors did on the sort of request of Villy, who designed the axe, to make it more handed. Now the only thing that we've found now is with the handed grinds that they've done, it's quite tricky to hold like this. So this is the right hand grind. So this has got a dead flat inside face and then a short convex grind on the other side. And they're so sort of exaggerated now, almost with a sort of slight hollow forged into the head, that they make them very handed. So they're almost like a side axe, which is great if you want heavy stock removal, if you're doing bowls or preparing billets for the pole lathe, things like that. You've got a really nice aggressive axe that will cut straight lines very easily. And perfect, really. So obviously you've got the right hand grind, and then you've got the opposite, you've got the left hand grind. Now what this chap was actually after, he'd looked on various blogs and stuff, and Villy sort of originally asked when the axes was designed, he wanted something that had an actual asymmetric grind rather than a handed grind. So what he was actually after, and this is the picture that I've drawn on this end, is he wanted a sort of conventional symmetrical grind, but he wanted me to elongate the inner face bevel, so that was longer and flatter, and then the outside bevel is still shorter and more convex. So I'll show you my original carving axe. Now when I had this direct from Gransfors, this was a symmetrical grind, and I actually took this on a carving course with Villy when I was making dough bowls, and he showed me what I needed to do to the axe. So you can probably see it. What I've done is I've lengthened this inside bevel, so that's a lot longer and flatter now. And if I show you this way, you'll be able to see it. So this is a lot longer and flatter. And then this side is more sort of foreshortened and convexed. So what that does is it gives you sort of like a halfway house between something that is symmetrical and something that is handed. So it's still going to be a more aggressive than the symmetrical grind, but still allow you to work with the grain slightly. The other thing that Villy actually told me to do was he said that all handles should be octagonal. He says if you look at your hand, it's never truly round. You've got all these different facets when you hold your fist clenched around a tool handle. So he told me to actually mask the edge and whittle this handle. So this is the original handle, and all I did was I carved these facets in there, which makes it really comfortable and really easy to grip. You don't have to grip hard to stop that axe swiveling in your hand. So this was my sort of modified carving axe, and this is basically what the chap that contacted us wanted me to do. So it seems a bit brutal, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brand new symmetrical grind carving axe, and I'm going to basically turn it into my axe. So I'm going to lengthen this bevel, make it a lot flatter, and then by removing material from this other bevel, we're going to end up with this being slightly shorter, and I'll convex that. So I'll take this into the grinding room. Hopefully you'll see how I go about doing it, and hopefully it will allow you to choose the right axe for what application you need it for. So we've come through into the grinding room. I've got the grinder set up and I've got my rotary platen on the grinder. Now this uses a tension rubber belt between sort of wheels, and I've chosen this section that's got the narrowest gap between those wheels, and I've tightened up the rubber belt itself so that it's very, very tight, so there's very minimal deflection on there. That's going to keep that bevel as flat as possible. Grinding on the rotary platen is much more comfortable than grinding on the hard flat platen because it allows for that belt splice and it will give a much better finish on the axe itself. So we'll fire up the grinder. I've put my chest cam on there as well, so hopefully you'll get a first person perspective of what I'm actually doing, and we're just going to lengthen that inside bevel to start with. So what I've done is I've lengthened that bevel now. It's nice and elongated, and I've tried to even it up. The forging, it was a little bit thinner at this sort of rear end of the axe itself, so the bevel is slightly narrower at that point, but that's looking pretty good. You'll notice that I was quenching it in some water to keep it cool, but using these modern ceramic belts, you'll find that they very little build up of heat. I mean, even when I was dipping it in there, it was only steaming a bit. It wasn't like it was turning the edge blue. So now that I've got that edge sorted, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to probably swap my platen over and then use a slightly slacker section of the rotary platen to round this, because this wants to be more convex. So I'll do that now. So we've rounded over that bevel and you've got a really nice convex grind happening on there. And I can see that I've got through to the cutting edge now, because I can see a burr all the way along that edge now. So now it's just a combination of swapping the grits, going through the grades of paper effectively, the belt grades. So this is 60 grit, so I'll do 120, 240, and then I'll probably finish it just with the leather strop. So we've got that ground and finished off to the 240 grit. So like I say, I've kind of removed some of that burr now, because obviously we've gone through the grades of paper on there. But now I'll take it through and give it a quick strop on my leather strop, and it should be razor sharp and ready to go out. And then we'll give this handle a little bit of a clean, because obviously it's got a little bit of grinding dust on there. So we've got the final polished edge put back on the axe. So you can see we've got that really nice polished convex grind on this side. So this is slightly shorter with that convex grind, and then we've got this long, flatter inside bevel that's going to make that sort of aggressive cutting tool, but still allow you to follow the grain a little bit. So no burr on there, razor sharp, ready to go. Obviously I've got a grinder, so it's very easy for me to sort of put this kind of finish on an axe. If you were going to do it at home, you would have to spend quite a long time either with a chainsaw file removing some of that sort of back of the bevel, or a very coarse diamond stone to really hog off the material before then polishing it with your normal sharpening stones. But I have used a little bit of water to keep that edge cool, so I always like to put a little bit of protective oil on that edge to make sure it doesn't get rust on there, because rust is the sort of killer when it comes to sharp tools. So a little bit of camellia oil, and then we can put that case back on the axe. Sometimes people get a little bit confused at how these go on, but basically with the axe covers on the carving axes, the tip goes in first, and then this little flap hooks around the back of that little sort of area where you can strangle up the axe head itself and pop that popper on there. So that's razor sharp, reground, ready for a new customer. So that's what we've been working on this Wednesday. It might seem kind of brutal to take a perfectly good brand new axe and modify it, but my way of thinking is as long as you're not going to damage the tool itself by overheating the actual cutting edge, you may as well get the tool to actually do what you want it to do. So obviously the customer had asked me to do it with our professional equipment here, but yeah, as long as you're not using an angle grinder and getting the edge hot, you shouldn't really hurt your axe. And remember, you can always modify that handle as well to give it that lovely sort of octagonal handle, so it's going to give you a lot of good grip. So that's what we've been working on this Wednesday. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing what we're up to, and remember to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.